One of the best games of all time is known as The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. And now you can jump into this world yourself inside virtual reality completely for free, which honestly is absolutely insane. So let's dive right into it. Now, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D is the enhanced version of the original game that was reimagined for the 3DS, but playing it inside VR changes the experience quite a lot. Now, just like in the original, you will start off in Kokiri Forest, where you will be directly searching for your trusty blade. And while you do so, you can interact with all the objects around you, just like you come to expect from a normal VR title. And because of this, the world will instantly feel so much more immersive, from smashing the pots to jumping over ponds, as well as picking up the rocks around you. Basically the basics that anyone does when they start a Legend of Zelda game. But once you finally found your way through the first small labyrinth and reach the treasure chest at the end, you will get your hands on your mighty sword, which you can then easily equip and start cutting down some grass, signboards, or everything else that you see in your path. But most importantly, you will find an interactive item list to keep all your stuff organized during your playthrough. Now, it is important to keep in mind that some areas will show up as locked both on your map as well as in the overworld, since these are still under development and can't be reached through other means. But most of the main ones can be fully accessed to your heart's content. This includes things like running around in Hyrule's fields to checking out the insane Deku tree before you start your massive adventure. But what surprised me the most is how good this game actually feels inside virtual reality. Because keep in mind that Ocarina of Time 3D came out over a decade ago, yet it still manages to capture that magical nostalgic feeling of wanting to see each little secret and corner that there is to explore. And of course, while the graphics might not look like the latest AAA VR game, I think that it has a lot of charm because of it. And to me, it was graphically actually looking much better than I even remember it to be. I mean, just look at this game. It just looks awesome to play in VR. But what might be the most insane part is once you realize that a single person made this entire thing inside a VR chat world, which I can't even imagine how long it must have taken to make this from the ground up, let alone working so smooth throughout the entire experience. But that also means that anyone can easily access it for free by just looking up Ocarina of Time 3D inside the search bar. And once you found it, just click on launch and you will jump right into it. And even better is that this world is both available for PC VR users as well as for Quest. So no matter what VR headset you are using, you can dive into it regardless. But you will of course still get a better experience if you're using PC VR. So if you have that option available to you, definitely go for it. But there is also one big downside we have to talk about. While I couldn't stop myself from smiling the entire time while playing it, and while it is by far the easiest and quickest way to play Ocarina of Time for free on your Quest, the game itself is still far from complete. This means you won't be able to follow the story from start to finish, and a lot of areas might either have their layout changed or cut short before you enter its dungeons or temples. And while this might not be a deal breaker for everybody, it can really take you out of the immersion quite a lot. For example, once you finally reach your destination like Hyrule Castle, but the gates just won't open for you. Now, there is still a lot of development going on to eventually get the entire game ported over to VRChat, but it might still take a while before we see it fully completed. Now, there are luckily also some other possibilities to get the entire game to run on your headset from start to finish perfectly by, for example, installing it as a mod. But this setup process is quite a lot more complicated and won't be inside an easy to use app like VRChat. But if you guys would like to see how to do that, let me know that in the comments below and I'll make a video on it. Just know that it is possible to play the entire game on Quest if you are okay with going through a big messy setup. But even so, getting to play Ocarina of Time 3D like this is still a great way to experience this classic hit and to revisit some of the iconic locations that a lot of us spent so much time in as a kid. But because Zelda has such a huge fan base and one of the best games in its series to have ever been released, there are also a lot of other people that try to recreate these worlds in VRChat or other places in virtual reality. This can go from the Great Plateau of Breath of the Wild to the original Majora's Masks and more. So if you always wanted to play some Legend of Zelda games in VR, then just take out your sword and start hunting for some rupees inside the many different worlds available at your fingertips. Heck, even in VR chat, you can already find near perfect recreations of these games that you can jump into in just a second. But for me personally, almost nothing can beat the original Ocarina of Time inside VR. But that's not all, because there are also some other crazy VR chat worlds that you have to visit. So click on the video that you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out. And of course, stay awesome.